Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Horsemanship Remark Show, the relaxing edition. Oh my gosh, I was so stressed on Sunday. It was crazy. So let's see. It is November 2023, and it is pouring down rain. I'm gonna get a little bit organized here and see if I can add Michael. Debbie, morning. Just thinking about you. So weird not to hang out every single day. I don't think I like it very much. Oh, here's Michael. We're going to add him in the invite. And let's see. Oh, Debbie, I'm so excited to get to complete the 6 keys to maintaining a fun, safe, enjoyable horse. I'm almost done.
I thought you were supposed to be done with that a few weeks ago. Come on, go with it.
That's hilarious.
Hey, you said it was going to be out. You said it.
No, I didn't. I said it was going to be up this week, Friday, for you guys, and then I'll have it ready for anybody who wants to get it. Well, they'll be able to get it as well. So, Jody, Mike, good morning. Who else is here? Robin, good morning. Hello.
Good morning.
What's on your mind this morning?
How cool your podcast was with Temple Grandin on Sunday. Hopefully everyone caught it.
So Monday, I was just pacing around the house because I was, yeah, just like, yeah, just coming off the adrenaline. I'm like, no more celebrities except for Beth until I can be sure about the technology. That's part of what's.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was a little, but it worked itself out pretty quick.
Yeah. So what did you think? Anything stand out to you? You guys, I want to hear what you guys.
I haven't read any of her books recently. I mean, it was several years ago I last read any of her. It'd be interesting to pick up her newer book and look through that. So it was really neat to hear her talk about it and hear what she was emphasizing in terms of horses and her, more recent work with horses and helping people with their horses. Some of it was kind of like, well, sort of that goes without saying from our perspective at this point, but it was still interesting to hear from her perspective with autism and the way her brain works and the way her brain thinks, just to remember horses really do think in pictures. I mean, I've just been thinking about that. I have 2 horses right now that, are very concerned about the world around them, just as their general, they just don't have a lot of exposure. I think both of them grew up kind of scared, a little bit overwhelmed, not understanding anything. And they're 3 and 4 right now, or 2 and 4. So just as I'm introducing things, going, yep, that would be a different picture for them. Yep, that would, because to me, the kind of most fascinating study she referenced was the Children's Play Set.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You could walk by it and the horses got comfortable walking by it when it was at this angle, and then they rotated it and the horses were immediately skeptical and sketched out by it again. Just because it was the same play set, the same palette of colors, the same location in space, but just the shape of it had changed. So just watching these horses go, well, the tarp was here today, but the tarp wasn't there. The tarp is draped over the roping dummy. The tarp is draped over the wall, which I've always been like, well, whatever, they're still scared of it. You just keep chipping away at it and go, okay, you're going to learn that this isn't a problem. But to think, okay, yeah, totally different. Like they haven't categorized it together yet because today, especially as kind of new as they are to being exposed to things. I mean, the one they said they probably hadn't been in an indoor arena ever. I mean, so like lots of new inputs coming in. Some days they're alone in the arena. Last night I was working late. Other days they're in the arena and there's horses coming and going and doors slamming and other people with flags. And so all of it's a lot of sensory input. And so that's sort of when she was talking thought picture, visual pictures, feeling pictures, and it just kind of brought your attention focusing on what is how is the horse perceiving all of this. So that was kind of interesting. And then the concluding comments, and I think it was your words. So we say horses, dogs, people are inextricably linked at this point, and I think that was kind of a neat way to wrap it up. There's another thing or two in there that caught me. I can't remember what it was. Too much has happened since I've listened to it.
So
what stood out to you? I mean, what? I mean, obviously, just the privilege of interviewing her and whatnot. But what, in terms of what she shared, what she, she clearly had ideas she wanted to convey as related to horses. What kind of struck you in terms of it's a good reminder.
I just want to say good morning to Katie and Joanne and Julie and the rest of you guys joining us.
Katie who?
Katie M.
Katie.
Is that how you say it?
That's who. Well, I don't know how you say it. That's who was
Uh-huh.
here boot camp last week.
Yeah, she said Wendy and Morgan. Say hello.
Yeah.
And
hello.
What videos would you recommend they watch right away?
On the Buck channel?
No.
Oh, an Insider?
Yeah, we're the Jim Insider, yeah.
I still like the one of Rook. At the 4/4 yield. And was it Rook doing hindquarter, forequarter up and down the pen? One of the first ones you did in the hindquarter, forequarter. I don't know. Go watch videos of Rook. Mm-hmm. Groundwork videos of the Rook. Those are all pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just tap through. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so Temple Grandin. First of all, that's part of why I was pacing around on Monday, because it's just the strangest thing, to have that experience after all these years, right? A couple things stood out to me. First of all, just hearing somebody else's perspective without having to really input that much, right? Basically, I loved her point about valuing horses or valuing people. Like there was the same sort of thing when a person can't verbalize in that way. Obviously, horses verbalize a little bit, but not that way. That does not mean that really is not a measure of intelligence. And I think that was really interesting, that horses and humans are emotionally the same. Like she mentioned that because we had talked earlier in the day. Those of you guys that I haven't told that to. So we had talked earlier in the day for about 45 minutes, and some things she mentioned during that conversation that she clearly wasn't interested in talking about for the show, and then some things they matter to her on the second go around, and one of them was how emotions are real in animals. And that comes down to our conversations about anthropomorphizing bad, in the sense that we're putting thoughts and values on the other individual. But that doesn't mean that they don't have emotions. Yeah. And it's so interesting for her to emphasize, like, when she started writing her writing way back in the day, you know, she
couldn't use the word fear.
those things legit got cut out, right? And then, you know, thinking about some things, for instance, is the herd bound a fear thing, right? Because
was interesting. I would have liked for her to say more on that. Like, separation anxiety is a different system operating than a fear response. I mean, it obviously, I mean, it makes them afraid, but what is it? I mean, I guess it's the element of them being herd creatures.
yeah, and
Puts that in its own category?
no, because when we were talking about Nigel, I got to ask her about Nigel and the dendrites, and you know, the pig study that she had done. I've talked to you about it, and I was thinking back when basically, you guys, what happened was my lip is on Nigel. About 10 years ago, we were doing a ton of things together, like a lot, every single day, many hours. And I was clicker training him. I was doing, you know, it was just an amazing time of exploration and discovery. And that had been going on for many months. And then I left on vacation for 2 weeks. I came back and he was cribbing and never stopped cribbing after that. And he started when he was about 13, so kind of interesting. And I just noted that it happened right when I had left. Essentially, I'm thinking some sort of withdrawals, right? And I had been reading her book, Animals in Translation, I believe, at that time. And she was talking about enriching animals' environments, and she was talking about pigs and dendrites, additional little dendrites growing in their brain. And then, you know, so I was thinking, well, maybe I did that with Nige, and then he, you know, that was the problem because I had grown this. But so I asked her about it finally. Pretty cool. And she said, no, that was her thought. She goes, no, it is just a straight up separation anxiety because horses bond. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So when she came down to saying that the fear was different than separation anxiety, I think that can be true. I mean, whatever, she's the scientist, you know. But I also think there is an extreme survival. Like, there's two different things, right, Michael?
There's
like there's
separation anxiety almost in terms of the bonding and closeness and the, I don't know if this is anthropomorphizing, probably not, the sorrow or the loss or the, or I can see there being a distinction. That was not the distinction in her quick listing the different systems that that operate in the horse. That wasn't, she didn't flesh that out. But yeah, that makes sense with more context of your earlier conversation.
Yeah, and the reason I think it's important to touch on with our discussions is just because herd bound is a fear thing.
Yeah.
Like, that is a fear response, in my opinion. It's and that's hard to describe in the sense that, let's say you have two horses that are pair bonded emotionally, or
it's hard to separate those two in that case. But it would be akin to someone moving away and the sorrow and disappointment and loss associated there versus we're in this dark alley and, you know, we get separated and I'm fearing for my life. I'm going, where the hell is my support? You know, that's exactly. You can see those are two entirely different things, but yeah.
And that's important as horsemen to understand those things. Because a horse that's afraid for their life is very, very dangerous. You don't know how to organize. That's super sad when they have separation anxiety in terms of like a friendship. And both of those things are very profound, but different. So that could be an interesting study. Somebody could, not that it really matters. That was part of the thing. It's like interesting to think of the practical application of some of these things. For instance, the concept of flags. She talked a lot about getting horses used to flags, and I would have been nice to direct the conversation just a tiny bit more regarding creating categories. Because I was interested to hear what she had to say about, like, I didn't know, maybe she knew, well, it's this many things in, it's this many trailer rides, or it's this many flags, or whatever. But then funny to think about, well, two things that I just want to say, how the magnitude of understanding the rectangle, the impact of all of that understanding rectangle, but separately, it would have been so cool for her to have seen somebody using a flag to show a horse something, to comfort a horse, like,
which is interesting in terms of when you're talking exposure, repetition, taking it from individual flags, like she was talking about a flag versus a tarp versus a big, American flag or banner flag versus a horsemanship, flag we'd use versus pendants like you'd have at a car sale, like getting them used to all those flapping things, and then that becomes a category. Like you're saying, like if you can really do the deal using the rectangle exposure to the point of this isn't gonna harm you, this can be actually a pleasant thing once you're in the rectangle, how much more quickly can that translate into the other items that she was listing in that category? Obviously I would say much more quickly. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear from her experience, with these different groups that she'd work with and different trainers that she had exposure to, what how she would have seen that. Because from our perspective, and this is interesting, I was talking to Mike about it yesterday, and
I can't wait to see him.
And he was talking about, she's coming at these things from a research mentality, like double blind studies, this,
non-confounding.
Yeah. Everything has got to be repeatable, have a control group, that sort of mentality. And then he said, but realistically, horsemanship is scientific too. It's observe, remember, compare, in the sense of this based on years of experience, multiple horses, like you're constantly, you've used the phrase for years, collecting data, and the horse is collecting data. So in a way, if you're observing, remember, comparing, your own little scientist, conducting studies that maybe don't have a double blind element to them or a control group, but it is still, you think of like Jane Goodall out there hanging out with the chimpanzees, and she became the expert. I don't know how much she did in terms of labs and comparing behavior in like a captivity sort of environment, but she was certainly became an expert, was a scientist in the sense of just observing. It's kind of, and Temple does this and did the same thing too. Just her early, you can just, you've seen the movie, which who knows how dead on accurate it is, but getting down in the chutes to observe what the cattle are observing, that's her observation, her unique observation with the way her brain works, that wasn't necessarily a scientific study at first. She's then backed it up as a scientist, as a researcher, so I don't know. It's like different types of scientists, different ways of thinking about collecting data.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Mike, because the reality is whatever works is going to have some sort of real reason. Of course, tricky to put your finger on the spiritual part of it scientifically at all. But perhaps we could even still there say that there is some mechanism. But okay, so I was listening to Vinay Prasad the other morning, and he was talking about running studies and confounding factors in studies. And I really do think this absolutely applies to horsemanship, which is why it takes a lifetime or a lot of experience to start to be super effective. So he was talking about more affluent grade schools having better educational results than lower socioeconomic schools, poorer schools. Let's just be real, right? So the more affluent school had Mercedes Benz and Teslas and whatever fancy cars driving up, and the other ones were just cars that I would drive, and so one could say, well, no problem, let's just get all the parents the fancy cars in the poor schools, because clearly one of them has the fancy cars, one of them has the economy cars, so let's just make sure everyone has the fancy cars, and then the education will work or be equal, right? And of course it's this, but this is the same thing with horsemanship, in the sense that, and we see this, right, all the time. It's like, well, I don't know what a good example is. Well, this saddle pad must mean that the horse is more comfortable with making transitions from trot to canter. It's like, no.
Maybe.
I mean, probably, yeah. It's like the chances of that being it are like actually tiny compared with the reality of, like, this is just something they have to get used to, right? Mm-hmm. So the confounding factors that you would encounter in any kind of scientific study, I was thinking, well, this is very similar in the sense, her point of like what the cattle see, and you could be like, well, maybe there were a bunch of other factors. You have to test it, and you have to test it repeatedly. Obviously, if you just bought the poorer parents Mercedes, what you would find out very quickly. Try it. Like, this does not work, right? So that's where,
kind of funny, I was actually explaining to Lydia this morning causation versus correlation.
I can't wait to see my soul sister. I can't wait till she grows up. Then we can really be friends. Be great. Yep. Yeah, so what'd she have to say about that? Or did she understand it?
Well, she slept in the last 2 days, which she never does. She's always up, like, on the clock. But she's been coughing and coughing and coughing for a month. So we got her an inhaler to see if that would help, because cough syrup isn't doing it, whatever. And she said, well, it's because I'm using my inhaler, which, good observation. It's very likely a possibility. I don't know if that would cause her to sleep differently, but it would be surprising if it did. But so she connected those dots, and then started saying, well, possibly, it might be causation, it could be correlation too. Like, they're just happening at the same time, but one isn't necessarily causing the other. So,
and that's so important in horsemanship. We've talked about this a million times, but it's hard to put words to it. It's like, yes, collect data, right? And especially,
there's so many variables.
Yeah, and collect data from the people that you like, what they're doing with their horses. But how many times have we said the words are just words, you have to try it yourself in an open-minded manner. And there's so many factors, like, well, am I presenting it the same way? Why is it not working? Or, none of that makes sense. I don't care who said it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not right. So, and that's okay, because we always talk about, do not follow blindly.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter who that individual is. And yet, as you get down the line, you might be like, okay, this
You learn to
field.
trust yourself, and pretty quickly who you want to trust, whose information you can rely on, because you can evaluate the results.
Exactly. And this is where we say, okay, the horse is the only judge, and every horse, of course, being a little bit different too. That was kind of interesting when she said, some horses are food more motivated and some horses are more relationship motivated. I thought that was super interesting, that she, from the way that she studies things, would be very sold on that idea. And as we talked about in the pre-show, I was thinking, well, how much of it is just clarity? Because horses, that is the thing they dislike the most. It's confusion, right? So let's say a clicker training experience where you are using a mechanical marker, which is very much more reliable than an inexperienced person offering a softening. And food being super obvious before you show a horse the center of the rectangle, which I do want to get back to. Your thoughts on that?
No thoughts.
Thoughts.
Well, yeah, it's just obvious. I either have a treat going into my mouth or I don't, as opposed to, well, and I often use the example of, how many horses get sweet on going on a pedestal after some, ask
clarity.
And there's this just struggle to get them there and to explain it. And the horse is going, why the hell would I step up there? Why don't I just go around it? And the horse finally gets up there. And they're like, yeah, that's the best. And they leave the horse alone. And the horse goes, wow, this was an accomplishment. I think this makes them happy. So, you can make that shift in energy from, come on, get it, to, yes, there it is. Very stark for the horse. But like you say, as you're trying to do that in more subtle ways in the context of, the rectangle, united circle, and energy up, energy down, neutral, active neutral, all of that can be very mushy as you're first offering it.
Which is why
the pedestal is a fantastic example of how much it works. Outside of the fact that, as you said, it's just so concrete. Like, I'm on a pedestal or I'm not. It says black and white as a treat, versus I'm on a united circle and I'm not. That can be kind of mushy for the horse if the people, the person is mushy.
100%. That's why, like I was just saying, cattle is this supposedly this magical thing. Like, oh, horses love a job. It's like, yeah, horses love clarity, and for the person, it is, which is not, there's something wrong with that. That's just how it is. That's just the process. But once again, it's like, why is it working? Why is the pedestal, right? That's the whole thing, is just thinking, oh, horses like pedestals, or horses don't like wind, or remember that one I told you? Or, oh, some YouTuber. It was just hilarious because, you get the microphone on and you're a tall dude and you're like, you've got an audience, and he just said, like, as if it was the gospel, horses don't like wind. And you're like, well, that's the Mercedes-Benz.
Depends on how many flies are out there.
Anyway, so the cat.
Uh-oh.
And it's like, it is the clarity. we can seriously see the thread. Clicker training, working cattle, standing on a pedestal, jumping the barrels, all of those things, like we can see that the clarity is what is beneficial to the horse. But so Michael, back to the rectangle and the flag. This is a very interesting point to me, because as we are using a horsemanship flag, the point is not to get the horse used to the flag, right?
Mm-hmm.
The intellectual item, the emotional item, really doesn't have anything to do with that. We're using the flag and the halter and the lead rope to show them something else.
Mm-hmm.
Which, so one could think, oh, we're getting them used to a flag. And it's like, yeah, but that is a side note.
Yeah, and without the rectangle, I mean, just think how drawn and energy up, energy down, pause, peace, all of that. Think how long it's going to take to expose them to all of these different flags without using the rectangle to help them through it.
And if you don't show them about the rectangle, it will never matter. The only thing you would get out of it is a horse that has tuned things out. As she said, desensitize them.
Yeah.
I mean, she said that straight up. And from a scientific perspective, and from, and a perspective like she has, so interesting, because I respect her so much, and that helps me to just think, okay, but that is the mechanism, right? And that is exactly what we don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you're showing them.
And you can, I don't know. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that in terms of, I want them to not be worried about this. But when it becomes, I can't use this to direct you, or you're just, you have no concern with anything, and you have no responsiveness to my direction. I don't know. It is interesting though, because let's say, and this is just sounds funny, super funny from our perspective. Let's say you wanted them to completely think flags don't move me, tarps don't move me, like nothing moves me, but your energy moves me. And so now you have to get that across without using the tarp, the flag, the tail, your rope, whatever, to follow. I mean, it's just you.
And moreover, what you're really trying to say is, here's the middle.
Yeah.
The only reason you're moving them is to get them in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're in the middle, then you just move that around.
Yeah.
Right? So if you desensitize them to something where it's like, well, that doesn't mean anything to me, it's like, okay, so then you
so like this, I mean, example being the saddle. Like I'm generally not going to use the saddle like a flag and drive them around. Like when I put a saddle on you, the saddle straight up doesn't mean anything until I'm in the saddle. My legs are in this, my feet are in the stirrups, and now it's directing you. But when you're going around, those stirrups are bumping around on you as you're, moving around the round corral. That's blank noise. It doesn't mean it. So, I mean, there are elements where, but they're still responsive to you based on your energy or whatever else you might be using, not the saddle, but the flag or the tarp or whatever, to motivate a change in response to your energy to get in the rectangle. So, I mean, it's not beyond what's possible to say you just don't want them to respond to a tarp. Like, I would never drive you with the tarp. That's just not something, it's just weird. Why would I?
What I always say to Novella, it's not for you. No, it's not for you. That means nothing. However, the horse does need to stay in the middle of the stirrups. You know, they do need to stay under the saddle. Like there are some parameters of like, here's where we belong in the world,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of the overall point, right? This is where you belong. This is where you fit. And when you're there, everything's good.
Yeah.
So
it's just fun. It's just fascinating. All of it.
Yeah. And so back to the Mike's comment of like, it is scientific. It's like, yeah. I mean, it's just that they're more complicated, more nuanced, more intricate things.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it comes down to, which I suppose every area of study or pursuit, you know, has those layers. I always wonder how many.
It's almost like the limits of the scientific method, and I might be, you know, thinking too small in a astrophysicist to be like, what the hell are you talking about? There's, you know, but the limits of the scientific method, in that there are so many variables that you cannot, there is no way to form a control group on all of the nuance of the, you know, the environment, the horse, the person, the, you know, the exposure that the horses have. I mean, the body style, the balance, the, you know, atrophy of the muscle, the extra
life balance, you know?
Yeah, and the way the horse feels that day, what's sore,
hungry,
what's not. I mean, I can't imagine a way in which you could isolate all the things we're trying to take in a controlled way and draw conclusions that you could present in a paper. I mean, if you think about it, like so many of these horses this, horses that, this scientific study, and we're like, yeah, why do you need a scientific study for that? That's like, duh.
And why does
who wasted all their time researching this? Like, doesn't everyone know that, or isn't that fairly obvious? But
and how limiting is it to waste your brain cells on those things that aren't even going to get you to the place you want to be? Yeah. In fact, they could lead you astray because, and you know, really, this is horsemanship or any art is just, you know, because there's too much intuition. And so we've talked about this a million times. If you are here with your in your frontal lobe with the data, even though, hello, that gives you a place to end. Maybe it all makes sense there, but that is this much of the experience. And that's the nitty-gritty of the reality, in my opinion. The intuition and the, which we could say, oh, the feely part, but people think the feel is, well, anyway.
Well, we could talk. And I mean, that bonding component, the separation anxiety, the, you know, the fact that the horses have emotions that are all wrapped into all the components all the variables we just talked about. I mean, I actually at one point thought I'd go into psychology for about 10 minutes. I started taking these psych classes, and it was all about this study or that, and I was young and not real sharp at that point, but I was just like, this is stupid. This is like generalizing way too much. This is not getting at the complexity of every individual. I'm like, this doesn't sound very fun. I dropped 3 classes that semester and picked up something else. Like, I don't want to go into psychology. This is not what I thought I wanted to do, what I was thinking it would be. So.
Yeah, and that's where the medium of art is
I was actually
valuable.
next time I have a chance to have Buck on the show. I think
Yeah.
I have a January,
Mhm.
Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, maybe I should just wait till then to
No.
my question. Well, thinking about how he went from, just say as a starting point, and this is if I'm putting my own ideas onto it, that's, well, certainly the case, because he would have to share his way of expressing it and whatever. But just from reading his books and knowing him, on level, and seeing who he is now and imagining based on what he said of his childhood, to hear him talk a little bit about how you go from the horses being your safe place in a world that was very chaotic, or an upbringing that was very chaotic, to there being this deep bond. Like, was that there from the start? I would suspect no. Like, I mean, he was cowboying for a while. He talks about being, striving, frustrated in the corner of the arena, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, trying so hard to get something done. He's out cowboy. I mean, he's the same as the rest of us, had to work to figure this all out, you know, as a kid, as a teenager, when he first met Ray. I mean, he had to go through the process of figuring it all out. And there was certainly, I would imagine, not certainly, I would imagine there was points at which, I mean, I would think there had to be a transition from, I just feel safe with the horses, but I know nothing. And then I learn something, just cowboying and being around horses and trying to get along with horses on some level, then meeting Ray. And then now to the point where obviously a wealth of knowledge, but also that opening up a level of bonding that, like, how did that all feel to him? I don't know. I asked the question of Mike way more succinctly, but just it'd be interesting to hear how that shifted as he was around Ray, as he came to understand the horse.
Are you basically asking how it went from his heart to his head to the spiritual experience? Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yeah, from the safety of the horse, which was kind of I feel like I can escape the world, or I feel safe here, to, the horse is maybe a tool at some point or a way to get the job done, to now I'm around Ray and it is kind of in my head, but now, just like all of us, are trying to understand the mechanics of it, and then it moves into more feel, and then it opens its door to this spiritual level and this oneness that there might have been a bond with a horse as a kid, but how is this different than that? And what was the journey?
Yeah, and we could probably ask a lot of people that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder
I mean,
how much that.
I could talk about it for me. I don't know if anyone wants to hear
I
it.
want to hear it.
Well, I mean, I kind of have talked about it. So I don't know if I want to talk about it right now.
No, you don't have to. You got to be feeling it to come around to that discussion.
Exactly. That's where you have to be like, not now, Michael, not now.
Well,
you get, okay, so you have how many opportunities to get Buck on the show over the year, and then you have well, is he ready to go play golf? Is he?
that's the thing about
what is his gut doing that day? Are the electrolytes all in balance? Is today the day for this question? Or
it's way easier to envision that with person.
Yeah.
Right.
In person, as opposed to on the show. And
oh, well, and with the horse is what I was thinking, like, is this the right time to ask so-and-so if they want to do this? Or, even I noticed the time of day, like when is a person more optimistic? So I want to talk about one of the girls who, and I won't say her name, but this kind of fits into it, because here's the thing with the horse, we can't be babying them in terms of like, well, you're not feeling really good today, so you don't have to toe the line. That is not a thing. Except, I guess we would say, if they're hurt, physically hurt, which you got to be feeling around for that. But I think generally we make way too many excuses for the horse, and we as people, and then that doesn't do them any service. So someone was asking me, that's why I posted it, Horsemanship Insider this morning, it's like, well, at first, directing the feet precisely and feel super micromanaging. The better you get at it, the more it's just setting it up for them to find it. But the question was a little bit like, well, when do you let them have an opinion? I'm pretty sure that was the gist of it. When do they get to say versus when are you not a dictator? Like, everyone kind of understands that the horsemanship was so awesome on the show. She's like, yeah, let's just call it good horsemanship. I'm like, yes, let's just do that, But the idea that we should be partners, there's a lot of factors in that. First of all, yes, that is super important, and to think about it from the horse's point of view, to think about what they're seeing, to take in all those things into account, to not be super duper ego driven, because if you're in it for your soul, then of course you're going to be hunting around for some sort of spiritual, what am I trying to say, growth, awareness. But also, I think there's a factor of keeping the relationship in the right, and by right, I mean working framework, whereby we are the leaders because we know the answer, which is a little tricky because we have to actually know the answer. And then the horse can need more support or less support depending on how educated they are. And you guys are going to see that I just did a video series that'll be out in the next couple days, and it's the 6 keys to maintaining a fun, safe, enjoyable horse. And once again, when we come down to that, you're really just touching on these things because you don't have to zoom in on them and make them happen or educate your horse, or so it's a lot more flowy the more educated and experienced they get. Same with us, right? It's a lot more flowy the more experienced and educated we get. But that does not change. And this, I do feel like sometimes this gets misunderstood. It doesn't, in fact, change the leadership role. I mean, it's such a limited word, but still, it doesn't change that the horse needs to be disciplined. In fact, they will be more disciplined the more they zone in on the center. Right? And it's not a favor to them to be like, whatever, tell me how you feel today. Right? It's like, no, because that doesn't serve you, horsey. And Michael, the farther I get, or the more horses I develop, the more convinced of that I become, in the sense that the experience is bearing that out. Like,
well, I think a lot of I don't know who asked the question, it doesn't matter, but I think a lot of times that question comes from a place of questioning oneself to help the horse find an answer that feels better, right? So you're doing your level best to do this with the horse, to get the horse centered, to help them be more peaceful, whether that mean less reactive and scared or more connected. You're working on your horsemanship and you're trying to get him with you and you're trying to get more accurate and you're trying to dial in the rectangle and be specific, and the horse is going, fuck, you're so overwhelming and you're not really getting me there. And so you're trying to get all of this to happen, and then you're going, well, maybe something's wrong, right? Or maybe like backing off and giving them space is going to be the answer. And that, like we just said, like you have to be unafraid to experiment. So if the horse is going, whoa, you're just really coming in strong here, and I don't know what the answer is, and you're noticing that in your horse, maybe backing off is the right thing for you to search around and figure it out. But that doesn't change the result that as you advance with your horse, like, and you get the skill to maybe not overwhelm your horse like that and have them confused because there's no hints in the right direction, or you're kind of picking at them and not being effective. So they're going, I don't know what you want, get care of this. Whatever. We could use lots of different examples, but I think it can come from self-doubt or frustration at your ability in the moment to get what you want, the picture you've seen, of others, or moments that you've had with your horse that where it's like, that's it. And then how the hell do I get that today? Or, like, how do I repeat that thing I felt that once?
Oh, it's that part's maddening.
Yeah. So yes, that does not change, yet at the same time, I think the reason that can be this inner turmoil is because it's not easy, right?
Yeah, all of what you're saying. Agree. I would just add, what I've been kind of thinking about is, yes, listen. I mean, your horse, you need to listen to the feedback, right? Mm-hmm. And be like, how you feel, or how you're receiving this, or your response to it. Like, duh, that's how
you would
going
adjust.
Exactly. But that is different than allowing their opinion to direct the goals. Yeah. Like, well, they want to get back to their friends, so that's how they're feeling today. Or they don't
want, that doesn't really want to move out. They're kind of,
or exactly. I was just, or they're tired today, so I'm not going to ask super precise transitions. Or they don't like the arena. They're just not an arena horse, or and it's like, I really think those are two different things. It's not a service to the horse to be wishy-washy, or to have different rules based on the feedback. But see, Michael, this is the thing. And you and I have the luxury of understanding a curriculum that fits together. Not that we're, done learning or how to apply it, but there is, you guys, there is a set way of operating within. There's a skeleton, a scaffolding that absolutely fits together and does work. And you don't have to be wishy-washy at all. There's no wishy-washiness required. There's no asking your horse's opinion required. How you apply those and how artful you are at being clear, at controlling our own body, at controlling our, like, then you, this is of course exactly as you say, the benefit of the horse is that the call and answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the same as, and maybe this is not what she meant. I might be getting this totally wrong, but it's what made me think of it, is that's not the same as questioning the scaffolding.
Or, yeah. Or questioning whether it's fair for you to have whatever expectation. But that is where I go to when you're questioning yourself and your clarity, it becomes easy to question whether it's fair. But if you trust the scaffolding, which it's hard to do, maybe as you're learning it, and not super effective at certain parts of it, or not as effective as you'd like to be.
Or making a mistake. I'll use an example. I think back to Vivian, and I'm sure I still do this to some degree, but I remember there was a time when I was doing this all the time. I was not controlling my legs appropriately at canter. So I would be in the wrong canter position, asking for a flying change or whatever, and if I had been overly forceful and not taken stock of myself, just do it. It's like, well, they can't do it because of blah, 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 blah. Or like you, Emma, are making from a mistake. You're doing it wrong.
And you want to give up. Just kidding.
But, well, I guess what I'm saying.
The reason I say that is it is just difficult. I mean, you have to work at it. You have to not be afraid to not get it right, not beat yourself up, and just keep going, keep trying.
And make sure your horse knows that you're annoyed with yourself, not them. Nathan, we used to talk about this all the time. It's like, just make sure, you and I have talked about this too, just make sure your horse doesn't think you're frustrated with them when you're really frustrated with yourself.
When you're frustrated with Emma.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't frustrated with myself. I was frustrated with you.
Oh, right. Or me. There we go.
Right? You remember?
What was it recently, Michael, just in the last couple days, where you were doubting me?
What?
Yeah, there's something. I don't know if it's on what it was. Something. I'll think of it. But I was like,
it's been eating at you, hasn't it?
No, I wish I could put my finger on it, but it's not, because I know how this works. First you doubt me, and then it turns out, and you're like, oh yeah, I was doubting you. I'm like, yeah, I know, because I know you well enough at this point. I can't think of what it is though. Yeah. I feel like maybe the Charlie videos, or you didn't watch those yet. I don't know. Yes. Oh, the novella. The novella video of the little short I sent you of the reins being too long.
I wasn't doubting you. I said I was observing the same damn thing you were.
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't that. I don't know.
Because you were saying, I'm looking at it going, is that right? Is that what I wanted? Like, you had to evaluate it yourself. And I was going, that was the first thing I noticed. Like,
what other video did I send you? Oh, never mind. We don't want to waste our time on this today, but I'll think of it. Anyways,
we haven't talked about that one on the show, because that was you put that reel up too, didn't you?
I did.
Is that a reel? Yeah.
What did you guys think about that? Tell me all about it. I wish we had some other people to give us and I've watched it back, and I'm like, I don't think I would change it. I don't think I would change it. But Nathan and I were talking about this, that in order to truly have credibility within yourself, and of course with from other people, is you have to show your work. And with horses, it takes time to show your work, many years, right? So we'll see if that is working with Novella, you know.
Not only we'll see, but you'll see, right? You're collecting.
This absolutely right. So for instance, not hammering on her to maintain gait, even though I was expecting her to maintain gait, but how precise it was for her to get to that. Like, I didn't just throw the concept out the window, but you know, how demanding, how what am I trying to say? Yeah, like intolerance for mistakes, or it's just like, or how many repeats do you do versus how much do you lay the hammer down? You know,
like I said, why don't we just all give up? It's so hard.
Yeah. Or I was thinking about with Katniss, you know, with her 4/4 yield, because you had a really responsive, you know, 4/4 yield on her. And of course, the feel that I want is a little floppier, right? Then it's a different taste. And so I kind of had to be like, I'm just gonna pursue this feeling, and the 4/4 yield falls apart, unlocking in the back, you know, stepping behind, like all these things, but then it comes around and kind of fits together in a floppier way, right? And it's like, okay, so at which point do we infuse our individual taste on all of this?
Mm-hmm. I think right from the get-go.
But like you say, that's hard to do as you're just learning.
Yeah.
Because you don't know. How are you supposed to know in the beginning whether I really have thought about this with the Charlie videos. So those of you guys that are members of Horsemanship Insider and watch the recent 11 Charlie videos, you're going to see, like, I was telling Julie, if you just watch the beginning of ride number 1 and the beginning of ride number 13, you will see the difference in the hindquarter yield. But if I didn't trust myself and was just
trying to make it like 13 on day 1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have to be precise and exacting and not wishy-washy and go, that's all you can give me, but you can't try to mash the whole thing out on day 1 either.
Mm-hmm. That's where so I made the comment about the cat, you know, the one that is getting gentle.
Mm-hmm.
Nuisance now in amongst my legs. But you know, being like, I know this cat is going to get to where he's a nuisance because I have enough experience to see this all shaping up. However, on the day when he's first letting me pet him, you cannot mash that in. It's impossible. You can't mash that in. You just, even though you know it's going to happen.
Be a nuisance.
Right. Or like somehow force it. So the same thing applies to developing a 4/4 yield that you like, you know, or a canter that, you know, you could be like, okay, today it's feeling. You guys will see on the Novella trot videos. You guys are really good to see this. I think it's coming out next week. Oh, maybe at the end of the month. So fluffing up her trot a bit. And you'll see me go, it's on its way. And how much more can I get out of this day? You know, whereas you got to fight that because it can only come as fast as it can come, even though you know what it's going to be. That is definitely something.
Would you say it's, if we're trying to parse out, you know, getting what's reasonable for today over against, oh, is this fair to ask of my horse? Oh, they're not feeling it today, or I'm not being clear, so maybe I shouldn't, even ask. Does it come down to, as I often point out to people, well, is your horse trying? Like, are they searching? Right? So if they're on the hunt, if they're searching, if they're trying, maybe that is enough for today. Maybe not even finding it, but the try, if there hasn't been a try, but that's, yeah.
But the shit part about it is sometimes they're trying and then you don't show them, and then you abandon them right before they get that answer, and they're like,
what was it?
Yeah,
why was I trying?
I was asking,
Yeah.
That was hard. It was a hard deal. Oh man. Another thing, well, finish. Do you have any additional thoughts on that?
No.
Anybody else have any additional thoughts on that? That is, and I'm sorry if sometimes I'm missing some of your comments. I'm looking here to see. I can see Diana. Hello. Good morning. Margie, Bonnie, Faith. How? Sounds like you're talking about resonant frequency. Oh, look, the comments are coming. Here we go.
Is that Faith? Resonant frequency?
No, that's Julie. Julio, it sounds like you're talking about resonant frequency and being able to know how to find resonant frequency on demand. Resonant frequency is when two wavelengths and frequencies align so that they sustain or amplify each other without any additional outside energy needed. Okay, so Julie, you have to help me. This cool concept, but how does that apply? I'm not sure how that applies to what we were just talking about. Maybe, and this could be an old comment too, unfortunately, just because I'm not always seeing them in order, but I will. That's so annoying.
It's better than over our Facebook podcast.
What was that?
It's better than having them scroll across.
100%. Yeah, that's no good. I'm not sure. But so I want to give a practical example of something that we talked about a lot, which is, first of all, that thing where you have so much doubt about, is a horse ever going to get over this? Or is a horse, they're just this way. They just have some sort of issue. And then you start to think about it. And it's like, they're going to wear a halter, period. That's just it. They're going to lead around one way or the other. That's just how it is, right? But imagine if we were worried about our horses pawing the halter off. Maybe he's just not going to be one that it's uncomfortable on his head or whatever. It's like, no, that's not a thing. And of course it's not a thing. We all have that. We've talked about this before, right? So Rook, she, of all the things, now Gary's going to be mad at me for saying it this way, but she blind spot under her chin. Whew, it's pretty legit. Like on her, it could get you bucked off. Legit, because it scares her. Now, it's better, but it's something that I have to for sure get all the way, because it's pretty dangerous. But I was putting the halter on her the other day, and the lead rope going underneath her chin, obviously back and forth, which I'm sure she was not a fan of to start with. I'm like, of course she's over it, because she's been exposed to it enough times. She clearly understands what it means. Swings to one side, she's probably going to need to go that way. So it does mean something. She's not completely tuned out to it. But then other times when it's hanging just there, it means nothing. And so she's...
So it's almost like how... it's kind of like how bad do you want it, in a sense? Like, and there is this self-doubt that you're referencing, like, can I get this done? But if you're like, this is going to happen, like Stephanie and I talked about with her colt that she started in Sheridan, it's like, no, excuse me, you're not going to start this fussing and kicking out at me and not going. You know, there it's like a little bit of kind of ponying up and going, no, I'm not going to question myself or kind of shirk back. And it's different, but similar to, no, we're going to get this done.
This is just how it is.
How it is.
Yeah.
I might spend my lifetime doing it, but this is going to get accomplished. But that
sureness,
the sureness and the commitment to it, right? Like, you have to stay at it and be willing to follow through.
Which is easier if you're sure that it's going to work.
Yeah. Or I mean, or if you're committed, right? If you're not distracted.
Oh, that's true.
Or, there's also the thing, and Buck talks about this relatively frequently. If it's not enjoyable to be with your horse, you're less inclined to be with your horse. But if you get to where it's enjoyable to be with so you can go, I want this to be better, but it's really miserable to work at it, right?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So then I don't take it through to the end, which is the opposite of, this halter is going on your head, right?
Yeah, it's like, of course it's going on your head. Well, Temple Grandin actually mentioned that, because I was asking her about her childhood and being autistic, and how her parents kind of held her feet to the fire, in the sense that she wasn't allowed to not participate. She had to do things to contribute. And I said, well, because I have a little nephew who's autistic, 5, quite autistic. And the question is, well, how do you force him to do anything? And to what degree should you force? How much allowance are you making for this individual's needs? And she goes, well, my mom wasn't going to leave a 6-year-old child at home because they didn't want to go out. Period. Mm-hmm. This was happening. Mm-hmm. You're coming with me because that's how it has to be. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't want to go to school. Well, I'm sorry.
Listen,
you're going to school. And yet there's other things where you're like, do you have to do?
Right.
But you're exactly right. How much are you going to dictate for a kid, as opposed to let them grow and have their own ideas and their own choices, rather than you just doing, making all their decisions for them. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is being somehow, and in horsemanship, it's a little, on one hand, it's more black and white, I think, than people think. But once again, that comes down to a scaffolding that you believe in and that works.
So what's more black and white than you?
Horsemanship.
Are you comparing it to with people?
Well, kind of, or just regular parameters. Like, there are some things that just you have to do, otherwise the consequence is unacceptable. You have to drive on the right side of the road in the US. You cannot just randomly be driving into oncoming traffic, otherwise that's it. Mm-hmm. So the same thing when it comes to horses, to varying degrees. For instance, Novella, my little lip is on, guys, is white. Therefore, you are going to be having a lot of baths, and your tail's going to be washed a lot in your life. That's it. Now,
she doesn't like water, though.
She does, right? She's afraid, and she absolutely was afraid, and she absolutely has taken time to, in Dayton, I had to be the one nobody could even hold her because she was just such a turd. So it's like, no, I have to be the one to hold you, because I'm the one who can realign you in the rectangle, which is super annoying when you're trying to get wet. You're getting wet, you're trying to get it done fast. It would be so nice if somebody else could. So my point is that this is a multi-year process. It's not, and if I was a better horseman, it would be faster, but the point is still the same. This is happening, girly. You're white.
Yeah.
Right. So So back to Rook. Two things. First of all, I find it so interesting that horses, for instance, that are so are normally super afraid of things being thrown at them, big, huge, scary things, and yet this time of year, like Rook, who could be pretty sketchy. I got her brand new blanket out last night because she had rain rot so bad. I have never dealt with it ever on the scale. A bunch of my horses got it to varying degrees. Like Novella didn't get it, Zorro didn't get it. But Prim had it all over little bumps as soon as it started raining right away. But hers was randomly gone in 3 days, and I didn't do anything. Really, really interesting. Rook, oh my god, Michael, I was like, what in the hell is this? Everyone got over it. Every single horse got over it, and she was covered from her withers all the way down her. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Side note, Gary suggested, well, and I hope he's not going to be mad that I say this, but he did suggest that I give her he said he uses penicillin a little bit, if it's really, really bad. So I put her on SMZs, not giving anyone veterinary advice. I'm just telling you what I did. I did put her on SMZs for 5 days, and it really helped, combined with, of course, treating it with a topical. But I had treated it with a topical for several days without much of a result. So I never dealt with it before. Also, my farrier says Listerine. Anyway, bottom line is, it's much better now. Ready for a blanket.
T-gel dander shampoo works.
Oh.
Although I did have one that was very extreme and it required decks. Like, it was bad. It was down her sides and everything. I mean, it just kept spreading. And no.
Was it the little bumps?
No, this one was like, she looked like an Appaloosa because it got to where they were the big chunks.
Mine was, Rook's was a tiny little stuff. Interesting. Wasn't really set up for washing. Just kind of, Banix is what I've been using. Anyways, point being, finally better. And yet it's pouring down rain, so I would like to keep her dry. So I get out her new blankie. And she's like looking at me, and then she was like, bring me the blanket. I'm serious. You know how horses get super happy about the fly spray. They're beside themselves at first, and then pretty soon they're like, yeah, bring that over here, put it on my belly. Mm-hmm. Right? That's another thing super interesting about Temple. The example of the crow making the plan that was really interesting. And horses planning, but really planning ahead. Of course, squirrels do that, but I guess I always think of squirrels just habitually doing it without.
There's a difference between instinct and
So,
what's interesting on the saving the water in the bucket that you brought up is like wild horses born in the wild will oftentimes not pass. I think I mentioned this the other day. Will not pass water, even if it's just this little puddle, without wanting to stop and take a drink because they don't know, take advantage of it. It's here.
Absolutely.
And so I wonder how much that's learned by the environment by going thirsty or
coming back and have it be gone.
Yeah. Versus just instinct that's been bred out of them, and they have to learn that, through deprivation or
trial and error. Yeah.
But that's different than the squirrel, putting away nuts. Like, no one has to teach them that, I don't think.
Okay, so you guys should listen to the Temple Grandin Sunday special. It's here on the Northwood Farms page and Spotify, YouTube, like all the places. But she was talking about a crow who, I'm pretty sure, right? The crow had 2 different cages. One was the fancy cage. One was the fancy.
There were 3.
And one was the boring one. and
And there was a lot.
yeah, a lobby in between. And the crow figured out that sometimes it got locked in the boring one. So it was like, aha, I'm going to bring some cool shit from
food. It was food.
Yeah, it was food. But I think there were also other things, right? Maybe toys and whatever. And it would bring some to the boring one in case it got trapped there. I thought that was fascinating. So freaking cool. It's so neat. But I wanted to say about Rook. This is striking to me because she tends to be. I haven't really gotten her to bond. She only came to live with me full time last year, and you know that seasoning that happens over a year. So she was super standoffish. Now she'll hang her head over the stall door and want scratches. But I just want to re-share with you guys that doctoring her has really changed the relationship. And she did not like me picking that stuff off her body. So it wasn't like she was like, yay, I'm getting massages and treats and stuff. No, but I was taking care of her. That's all I want to say about her. Like, it's striking, though, I guess, is the reason I'm bothering to mention it is because the way she's looking at me, the way she's interacting with me is for sure different. And the only thing that has changed is me doctoring her.
On the, this is inevitable, it's going to altering, blanketing, whatever, saddling. People, I'm not always the most patient person in certain situations, but people be like, oh, you're so patient. I'm like, yeah, because I know it's going to work. I think it's easy to be patient when you know it's going to come through. It's not like, oh, I hope that I can get them through this. So, and then on the other hand, you hear over and over, my horse doesn't like this, or, he tosses his head, and it's kind of like this just acceptance.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is just what my horse does. I'm like, well, you do realize it doesn't have to do that, but you have to, you have to know what to do about it, right? You have to believe that it can change, and then
of course, being able to observe horses that are happier after you require some things, after you are
that's huge. That's huge.
That's a huge deal because
so Jen picked up her little baby horse yesterday, and she brought this pretty incredible thoroughbred that she got. Actually, what did she say? I don't know. I think he's Minnesota bred, but he is the highest winning Minnesota horse ever, or on record to date. Anyway, pretty nice horse, but so I think I mentioned with Jen and her baby, Jen's just like a get it done, like kind of high energy, high intensity person, giving her some lessons, but it's kind of like, okay, now we're on to the next thing, not super systematic, diligent, like working at this piece of it. Faith is good friends with Jen, so you can tell
asking, yeah.
You can tell Jen I'm talking about her. So anyway, she brought her thoroughbred, who Faith has worked with some.
Is this Hot Shot?
Yes.
That's what she was.
Yeah. And Jen was here with her mom, and I think they were just, I don't know, maybe putting words in their mouth, but they were pretty impressed with the change from, her general request was like, I want him to be more connected to me. Like, he's not spooky or like way, distracting, but he's just not with me. He's looking over there. He's kind of blank. He's like the typical, horse that knows their job. And so they're kind of stoic in their job, but there's not really a connection there. and there's a little bit of a, okay, my world just changed from I had my routines on the track to now what do I hang my hat on? So things are a little concerning. So now I'm even maybe kind of a standoffish horse, maybe a little bit more, who kind of holds things close or is kind of goes internal just a little bit, not in a like I'm shutting down way, but just a like I'm going to kind of close myself off a little bit. So she wanted to see that change. And I want to say it was the rectangle, but it was very much being specific with the rectangle, not just stay where I put you, but by softening, encouraging, shaping on the circle, encouraging forward and through with the inside. I mean, just all this. And by the end, I mean, he was just totally different expression. And he was like way more kind of cuddly, interactive at the end of it. And, you know, I don't want to put words in her mouth. Like she was blown away by it, but her and her mom were both like, wow, that
was
like it's pretty
the benefit, not a
how much of a change. And it didn't take a lot because he wasn't real, none of it was real extreme, but he would, you know, just kind of go and kind of be tuned out and thinking to the outside. And then if you put a little pressure on him, he's like, okay, now I really want to get away in my nose. So there were times where I cornered him pretty strong. It seems like, well, why are you doing that? Like he's not doing anything wrong. Like, but just defining that rectangle, saying when you feel the end of the rope coming, you got to come off of it. And when I'm working with someone like, I don't know her mom, well, her mom's never seen me work with a horse.
I just want you to know my battery, unfortunately, is.
Well, I should probably go anyway because I got.
But I want to hear the rest of it. But I just.
So I'm always, like I was saying the other day with the gentleman Ed in the clinic, like you're kind of feeling out. Like I want to give you context for why I'm doing this because it could seem like fairly severe, right? Or like even with the baby at times where it's like he was just kind of gonna, and it's like, no, you got to move your hindquarters. And like, wow, you just really pulled on that horse. Or like the first time I helped Faith with something, and I'm like, I know she does body work, and like, or you're working with a vet, and you're like, you just really torqued on that horse. What are you doing to their spine, or you know, whatever, all that. So you want to be sensitive to that and like explaining what you're doing while you're doing it, building credibility. And it didn't take much of that with him, but there were times where I was like, no, I'm going to corner you. And so I don't know what her mom was thinking in those moments. Who knows? Maybe she was like, whatever. But to see the change in that short amount of time was just really cool. So, I mean, I don't know where I started on this, but the rectangle, you know, kind of back to the first part of our conversation where we were talking with the flag and the rectangle accomplishing all of that. Another big thing was it's not about getting away from the flag. You can come into the flag. The flag is just here, you know, and that would be another one. Like, you're scared of the flag or you're not. Like, it's inevitable. There's no you not getting over the flag.
And yeah, and we're gonna have to go for sure. But
yeah, okay.
That's another thing where it's just like, well, I've seen it so many times. Like the human, am sure that this is gonna work. Yeah. Whereas in the beginning, you're like, oh, I don't know if my horse can get over it. I'm sorry to cut this short, you guys, but I don't want to lose the show. So we're gonna have to be done so that I can save it. And that was my fault because I forgot to put my phone on the charger early enough. So I'm sorry about that. But anything else real quick, Michael?
Nope.
Okay.
Now we gotta go.
All righty. Well, thanks everybody for being here. Michael and I will be here again next Thursday morning at 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
8:30 Central.
All right, everybody. Bye.